This video is a continuation of Comenius Plants Part 2 Potherbs. Cicer, Ciceron, et elapoboscon. Cicer in Pliny is probably parsnip or Pastinaca sativa, but it has also been identified and translated as sciret, situm cicerum, skierwickerut, for example, in John Ankeren's 1631 English translation of the Yanawa. The English word parsnip is constructed of parse plus the same nip as in turnip. Parse, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, somehow managed to emerge via Old and Middle French from Latin pastinaca. What was pastinaca, from which we get our genus name for parsnip? Hold that thought while we first explain elapoboscon. Dioscordes has two plants that have been identified as Pastinaca sativa, Ciceron gnorimon, the well-known Ciceron, who herisda heptae el stomachos, whose root, when boiled, is tasty or wholesome, etc., and elapoboscon, literally deer's food. Ekeda parapuadas hikanas hokaulos, skiadea ekusas homoia anetoi. Its stalk has quite a few offshoots that have umbels similar to the dills. Here's the dill. Observe their sciadea or umbels as we go through the plants in the family Apiaceae. Tauten pasiten poan nemetesas tas elapus ant eken tois ton hepeton degmasin. They say that deer that graze on this herb develop a resistance to the bites of reptiles. Compare Pliny, elapoboscon ferulaceum est. Elapoboscon, identified in the Loeb edition as wild parsnip, is a plant like fennel giant. And here is our Ferula communis, the giant fennel, also umbellate. Quippe fam est hoc pabulo cervos resistere serpentibus. In fact, report has it that deer, by eating it, fortify themselves against snakes. If deer eat elapoboscon or parsnip, what do rabbits eat? Pastinaca, daucon, et stapulinos. In Pliny, pastinaca is a generic name for carrot. It sometimes refers to the Daucus carota, our wild carrot species, but also to quite a few other carrot-like species not easy to identify. The Daucus carota in Theophrastus is daucon, in Dioscordes stapulinos. To complicate matters, Dioscordes and Pliny also have a daucos, the masculine variant of daucon, and these represent a variety of genera and species. The word carota, from which we get carrot, is late Latin. Etymologically, we saw that the parse in parsnip comes from pastinaca. Pastinaca comes in turn from the verb pastino, to prepare the ground for planting by digging and leveling, plus the suffix aca. The cognate noun pastinum is defined by Columella as follows: pastinum vocant agricolae ferramentum bifurcum quo semina panguntur. Farmers call a pastinum a two-pronged iron implement, we call it a dibble, used to pound seeds. Now, my friend Bugs Bunny stopped by and said the carrot in this picture is not one he's ever eaten. And that's probably true. It's a wild carrot, and Bugs is used to the domestic orange cultivar that was only being developed around Comenius' time, the Daucus carota subspecies sativus. In the well over 1,000 years that transpired between classical civilization and Comenius' era, not only the names of plants evolved, but also the plants themselves, randomly in nature and through human cultivation and manipulation. Within the over 1,000 years that spanned classical civilization, the same evolution of language and life occurred. As you're well aware by now, these phenomena make exact identification of the plants in the ancient sources challenging. Take this sentence in Pliny, for example. terra conduntur rafani napique et rapa, atque alio modo inulae cicer pastinacae. The Loeb edition translates this as radishes, navews, and turnips are hidden in the earth, and so in a different way are elecampane, skirret, and parsnips. But they footnote the sentence saying cicer may be the parsnip. Pastinaca originally denoted the carrot, but came to include also the parsnip. Apium, selinon. Just as the line between carrot and parsnip blurred in antiquity, so did that between celery and parsley. In Pliny, apium is a general word for a celery-like plant, including both our celery species, apium graveolens, and our parsley genus Petroselinum, with varying species names such as crispum, sativum, and hortense. The editors of Theophrastus and Dioscorides take the Greek selinon to be more exclusively the apium graveolens, celery, but Theophrastus mentions 3 species of wild celery, hypocelinon, horse celery, heliocelinon, marsh celery, and oraocelinon, mountain celery, and Hort takes this mountain celery to be Petroselinum sativum, parsley. The name Petroselinon, rock celery, comes from later Greek authors such as Dioscorides. Apium graveolens in Dioscorides is selinon kepaion, garden celery, and Petroselinon is Petroselinum hortense. In the Greek world, selinon had a very ancient pedigree. For starters, it is a word in the Mycenaean Linear B script. In fact, celery came into this world very early and in a rather gruesome way. We learn this from the Protrepticus of the early Christian writer Clement of Alexandria. While Clement tells the story of various pagan rites only in order to ridicule them and to convert the pagan Greeks to Christianity, I don't see why we shouldn't believe them. So he writes of the mystic corybantic orgies, et teleste ep optelsai kai corybanton orgia. Now, if you would like me to also initiate you into the corybantic orgies, ton triton adelpon apoktenantes, 2 brothers of the Corybant family having murdered a 3rd brother, and Clement goes on to describe how these 2 conducted their slain brother to his burial near Mount Olympus, after which Clement sarcastically concludes, kai taut esti ta mysteria, sun elonti panai, ponoi, kai tapoi. Here we see what the mysteries are. In one word, murders and burials. Hoide hieres hoi tonda, pros epiterateontai te sumparai. The priests of these mysteries add a portent to the dismal tale, holoriston ap agoreontes selinon epitrapesdes tithenai, forbidding wild celery, root and all, to be placed on the table. Oiontai garde ec tu haimatos tu aporuentos tu corybanticou tos selinon ec pepucenai, for they actually believe that wild celery grew out of the blood that flowed from the murdered brother. That's how we got celery, or wild parsley. The horses of Achilles and his myrmidons, idle while Achilles sulked in his tent at the beginning of the Iliad, enjoyed grazing on it. Hipoide parharmasin hoisin hekastos loton ereptomenoi heleothrepton teselinon hestasan. And the horses stood by their chariot, each grazing the clover and the marsh-bred parsley. Moving ahead to the early classical period, we learn from Pindar that the victors at the Isthmian and Nemean games were crowned with wreaths of wild parsley. For example, in the 13th Olympian ode, duo dauton erepsan plokoi selinon en isthmiadesin ponenta, nemeat uk antigzoe. And 2 wreaths of wild parsley crowned him when he appeared at the Isthmian festivals, and Nemea offers no opposition. And in the second Isthmian, uk agnot aedo istmian hypoisinikan tang xenocrate poseidaon opasais dorion autoi steponoma komai pempen anadestai selinon. Not unknown is the Isthmian chariot victory that I sing, which Poseidon granted to Xenocrates, and sent a crown of Dorian parsley for him to bind upon his hair. Finally, backing up to the period of archaic Greece around 628 BCE, the city-state of Megara sent out a Greek colony to the southwestern coast of Sicily. Because of the abundance of wild celery in the area, they named it Selinus, as commemorated on its coins. Jumping ahead a millennium, late Latin Latinized the Greek word selinon as an alternative to apium. This became celero, plural celery in Italian, and eventually celery in English. The word apium, though, didn't disappear from history. It lent itself to our family name Apiaceae, known as the celery, carrot, or parsley family. Though just as Brassicaceae were once known as cruciferi because of the cross-like figure of its flowers, Apiaceae were once and are sometimes still called umbelliferae because the inflorescence in most of its species is called an umbel, from Latin umbella for parasol or umbrella. Lactuca, Thridax kai Thridacine. Our word lettuce comes via the Romance languages from Latin lactuca. Lactuca comes from lac, milk, because of the milky sap in many of its species. This sap was believed to have a soporific effect, as on these knocked-out bunnies of Beatrix Potter. Already by the time of Theophrastus, farmers had developed out of wild lettuce many cultivated varieties, and the ancient and post-Renaissance botanical writers typically divided the many lettuce species into the two broad categories, cultivated and wild. Theophrastus used Thridax for Lactuca sativa and Thridacine for Lactuca cereola or scariola wild lettuce, though his Loeb editor says perhaps not always consistently. Dioscorides didn't use the word Thridacine, but simply qualified Thridax as hemeros or agria. For example, Tarikeon tai Thridaces hemerai and halme, cultivated lettuces, are preserved in brine. Ek kaulesasai de ekosi par imperonti te tu kulu kai opu duname te tes agrias Thridakos. And when they have run to stalk, they have something that resembles the properties of the juice and of the milky liquid of the wild lettuce. In Sprengel's Latin translation, Muria etiam condeuntur lactucae sativae, ceterum cum in caulum exaerunt, vim adapiscuntur succo expresso laticique lactucae sylvestris aemulam. You can see from the serrated leaves of the Lactuca cereola where it gets its scientific name from. Theophrastus compares this leaf in one of the wild lettuce species to that of the scolomus. Gene de Thridacines leuces estin ala tria, tote platucaulon, kai strongulocaullon, kai triton tolaconicon, haute de tomen pulon eke scolumodes, or thede kai el auxes. Of the white wild lettuce, there are three other kinds. The third, the Laconian, has a leaf like the scolomus, but is erect and strong-growing. And so, scolomus, scolumos. The scolomus is the golden thistle. If you saw our Praefatio videos on Theophrastus and taxonomy, you are a veritable Theophilus Thistler thistle sifter. The Praefatio focused on the pine thistle, but the golden thistle was another of Theophrastus's examples of his class of spinous wild subshrubs he calls Togenos acanodes. Our edition of the Yanoa with the Greek translation supplements scolamus on the Latin side of the ledger with cardaeus altilis, which means fattened thistle. In Pliny, cardaeus was a generic name for thistles and was also used with reference to specific thistle-like species such as our Scolamus hispanicus. In fact, if we consult Bohin's Pinax again, in his chapter on Scolamus sive cinara, we see cardaeus among several ancient names and citations for this plant, including the Greek names hekinara and hekaktos. Kinara is the ancient Greek name for artichoke. Returning to the pine thistle and addressing you graduates of our thistle class again, you may remember that Dioscorides said of the kamaileon leukos, one of the names for pine thistle, Eke pula homoia siluboi e scolumoi, kaulonda uk eke ala apiesin ek tu mesu akanthan homoian ekinoi talasioi e kinarai. The pine thistle has leaves similar to the thistle or the golden thistle, but it has no stalk, rather it sends forth from its center a prickle resembling a sea urchin or an artichoke. As far as the cactus goes, it was Theophrastus's final example of a plant in his spinous-leaved wild subshrub category ta pulacantha. Hede cactus calumene perisicalian monon inte heladi de uc estin. But the plant called cactus grows only in Sicily and not in Hellas. Idionda para tala to puton. It is a plant quite different from any other. Ap iesigar eltus apotes ristes caulus epigeus, to de pulon eke platu kai acanthodes. Calusida tus caulus tutus cactus. For it sends up straight from the root stems which creep on the ground, and its leaf is broad and spinous. These stems are called cactoi. Edodimoi de esi peri lepomenoi micron epipicroi kai thesaurisdusin autus en halme. They are edible if peeled, and are slightly bitter, and men preserve them in brine. Heteronda kaulon orthon apiesin hon calusi ternica. Ginetai de kai hutos edodimos plain a thesauristos. There is another kind which sends up an erect stem called the pteryx. This stem too is edible, but cannot be preserved. Hort identifies the Sicilian kind of cactus as our Cynara cardunculus variant altilis, common name cardoon, a word that derives from cardaeus, and he identifies Theophrastus's second kind with the erect stem as the Cynara cardunculus variant scolamus, common name artichoke. So you see, the names scolamus, cardaeus, cynara, and cactus get tossed around as in a salad. See if you find this passage helpful from Athenaeus' Deipnosophistae, the sophisticated banqueters, from the early 3rd century of the Common Era. The learned speaker cites a number of examples of the use of the word cynara in classical Greek literature, and then goes on to cactus. Paenias de en pemptoi peri puton cacton sicelicentina cale, acanthodes puton, hoscae theoprastos en hectoi peri puton. Phineas, in Book 5 of his work on plants, mentions a Sicilian cactus, which is a spiny plant. Likewise, Theophrastus in Book 6 of his On Plants, and the speaker proceeds to quote the entire passage on cactus in Theophrastus. He then poses this question to his fellow banqueters. Tis de tutois uki petomenos taron an epoi, ten cacton enaitauten, ten huporomaion men calumenen cardon, that is cardaum, umacran onton tes sicilias, peripanos de hupoton helenon cynaran onomas domenen, alagegar duogrammaton, cardos kai cactos tauton an ee. In the Loeb translation, Can anyone accept this evidence, meaning of the caliber of Phineas and Theophrastus, but lack the courage to say that this Coctos of Phineas and Theophrastus is what the Romans, on the one hand, who are not located far from Sicily, call Cardos, that is, Cardaeus, and what the Greeks, on the other, patently refer to as the Canara? Because if two letters were changed, Coctos and Cardos would be the same word. Following his chapter on Scolamus sive Cinara, Bohine adds one for Cardui aliquot exotici, some thistles from foreign lands. One of the names Europeans gave to the newly discovered cacti of the West Indies was Melococtus, melon thistle. Christopher Columbus brought back the first New World cactus to Europe and is said to have named it Echinomelococtus, spiny melon thistle. Linnaeus accepted these names but shortened them to coctus when creating his genus of the same name. He made Melococtus his type species. And from that point forward, we had an ancient Greek name for cardoon and artichoke misapplied to the New World cacti, which taxonomically and cladistically are entirely different plants. Intubus sativus, Ceres e Cichorion. Intubus was a generic Latin name for chicory and chicory-like plants. It is Linnaeus's genus Cichorium, divided primarily into two species, Cichorium intubus, chicory, historically regarded as the wild, and Cichorium endivia, endive or escarole, historically regarded as the garden variety. Comenius evidently had the garden variety in mind. Wild, cultivated. But Theophrastus actually had a unique category for this plant. If you watched our plant Praefationes, you're familiar with the layout of Theophrastus's Periputon Historia. Books 7 and 8 are about herbs, ta poiode, Book 7 specifically about potherbs, ta lacana. He divided lacana into three classes, cultivated, wild, and a class he calls ta aruraya, roughly translated as field weeds. He arura is field. Tonde aruraion legomenon meta tauta tut esti ta lacana agria reteon, kai holos eti poiodes estin hometun cane broton. Having just discussed wild herbs, we must now speak of the differences in field weeds, and in general of any herbaceous plants that are not edible. Calumen gar lacana ta prosten hemeteran crean, inde toi catholu cacenai peri eketai, diho kai peri ekenon lecteon. For we give the name potherbs to those herbs which are cultivated for our own use. But in a wider sense, the term also includes those, that is, the field weeds and non-edible herbs. Wherefore, we must speak of them too. Lacana mende kai ta toiauta kaletai kikore apape, kai holos hosa kikoriode kaletai diaten homoioteta ton pulon. Indeed, such plants are called potherbs as chicory, dandelion, etc., and in general all those that are called chicory-like because of the resemblance in the leaves. Hort identifies Theophrastus's chicore as Linnaeus's Cichorium intubus. Our word chicory comes directly, of course, from this Greek word, which has feminine and neuter variants, he chicore and to chichorion. Linnaeus as often combined the Greek and Latin to make up his binomial Cichorium intubus. Dioscorides calls the genus Ceres and the wild variety explicitly as Cichorion. Ceres agria kai hemeros, hon hemen agria picris e Cichorion caletai, hetis esti kai platupulotera kai elstomacotera tes cepeltes. There is a wild and a cultivated Ceres. The wild is called bitter or chicory, and it is both more wide-leaved and more wholesome than the one grown in the garden. Kai tes cepeltes de diton eidos, hemen gartisisti tridacodestera kai platypulos hedestenopulos kai empikros. The one that grows in the garden too is of two kinds, for one kind is more lettuce-like and broad-leaved, I believe that's our escarole. The other is narrow-leaved and rather bitter, I believe that's our endive. For Pliny, endive, which is how the Loeb edition translates his intubus, was kind of like lettuce or kind of not. Neque ex eodem genere, id est genere lactucae, possunt dici, neque ex alao intubi. Endives cannot be said to belong either to the same class of plant as lettuce or to another class. Hiem est hi patentiores virusque praeferentes, sed caule non minus grati. Being better able to endure the winter and having more acridity of flavor, but its stalk is equally agreeable. Seruntur ab aequinoctio verno, plantae eorum ultimo vere transferuntur. They are sown after the spring equinox, and the seedlings are bedded out at the end of spring. Est et erraticum intubum, quod in Aegypto cicorium vocant. There is also a wild endive, which in Egypt they call chicory. Now, I'm not sure why Pliny seems to think the use of the name cicorion was exclusive to the Greeks in Egypt. Maybe his source was an Alexandrian author. In any case, notice the meaning in classical Latin of plantae, namely seedlings. Plantae only began being used as a collective term for plants, like ta puta in Greek, about a century before Comenius. Renaissance and post-Renaissance botanists writing in Latin frequently used herbae and stirpes. Have a final look at chicory and then endive or escarole. And remember the words of Sir Thomas Elyot in the Castell of Health of 1541 as cited by the Oxford English Dictionary. Endive and scariole be much alike in their operation to chicory. By the way, through a change in consonants that linguists can explain, intubus became endive in the Romance languages and English. Of Comenius's potherbs, the lactuca, scolomus, and intubus belong to our Asteraceae family. The family gets its name from the star-like form of the inflorescence of many of its species. Aster, as you know, is a Greek word for star. The family is sometimes referred to as the daisy or sunflower family, and it was formerly called the composite or compositae family. The daisy is an example of a composite flower. A composite flower, sometimes called a pseudanthium or false flower, superficially looks like a single flower, but each apparent petal is actually an individually complete ray flower. The center of the daisy is a dense pack of individual tiny disc flowers.